Broadcasting live from somewhere in the Shadow Realm, this is YuGiOh Duel Links Talk. Here's your host, Doug Dimmadoo.
Hey there, and welcome to another episode of YuGiOh Duel Links Talk. Today, we're going to take a look at a zombie deck build that many of the pieces can be found in a few of the more recent deck boxes. So you can obtain a lot of these at the shop. You go take a look at what's in the shop there. But anyway, I want to take a look at these cards. Let's start going through them and see what's in it. First card is Vampire Lord. It's the level 5 zombie with 2,000 attack and 1,500 defense. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, declare one card type, monster, spell, or trap, and your opponent sends one card of that type from their deck to the graveyard. Once per turn during your next standby phase, after this card in your possession was destroyed and sent to your graveyard by an opponent's card effect, special summon this card from the graveyard. So Vampire Lord's a good card, not just for the 2,000 attack, but also for its floating effect. So say, for example, it gets destroyed by card effect. Maybe your opponent uses Super Rush Headlong or something against you. Well, because it got destroyed by card effect, the next turn you're going to get your Vampire Lord back out on the field. So it's really tough to kill unless your opponent has a monster that can just run into it with a high attack. So the next card that we have here is Gozuki. It's another ultra rare, but it's a level 4 zombie, 1,700 attack, 800 defense. During your main phase, you can send one zombie type monster from your deck to the graveyard. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish one zombie type monster from your graveyard except Gozuki and special summon one zombie type monster from your hand. You can only use each effect of Gozuki once per turn. So the nice part is, you get some monsters into your graveyard that maybe you'd want there for one reason or another, especially from the zombie perspective. But also, too, the fact that, once this card gets destroyed by battle, then activate its secondary effect. If you got a pretty strong monster in your hand that may require some tributes, say, for example, maybe you have a Red-Eye Zombie Dragon or, like I said, a Vampire Lord, too. If you got that card sitting in your hand, just banish the zombie monster that you put in your graveyard from that first effect and utilize that secondary effect to get a much stronger zombie out onto the field. So it's a really good combo play. Having multiple copies of Gozuki would be an ideal situation, but in this case, this person only has one copy. Maybe they're like me and can only get one copy so far, because I know it's a lot of packs in Crimson Kingdom. So anyway, moving on, next card we have is Red Eye's Zombie Dragon. It's a level 7 zombie, 2,400 attack, 2,000 defense. You can tribute summon this card in face-up attack position by tributing one zombie-type monster. When this card destroys a zombie-type monster by battle and sends it to the graveyard, you can special summon that monster to your side of the field. So, one situation where I think that this could actually work out, and it's not in this deck, but even with Mystic Box, say for example you give your opponent one of your zombie monsters, then you summon your Red-Eye Zombie Dragon and attack into your zombie monster, then bring it back to your side of the field. You could always do something along those lines, in the process getting rid of a monster that maybe you don't want your opponent to have. So Red-Eye Zombie Dragon does have a really good effect there, and it's got a 2,400 attack, which is nothing to sneeze at, your classic Red Eyes attack. Then you have Ill Blood. It's a level 6 super rare zombie Gemini, 2,100 attack, 800 defense. And as true to typical Gemini monsters, this card is treated as a normal monster while face up on the field or in the graveyard. But while this card is face up on the field, you can normal summon it again to have it become an effect monster with this effect. Once per turn, you can special summon one zombie type monster from your hand or from either player's graveyard. When this card leaves the field, destroy all zombie type monsters special summoned by this card's effect. So it's really good to get monsters on the field, and of course, if it gets destroyed, then any monsters that you brought back are going to be destroyed as well. But still, really, really good monster to start filling your field if you're able to activate its Gemini effect. Then we got 3 copies of Fear from the Dark. It's a level 4 zombie, 1,700 attack, 1,500 defense. When this card is sent from your hand or deck to your graveyard by an opponent's card effect, special summon this card. So depending on what your opponent's running, this actually could end up being special summoned out on the field. Maybe not in the current meta, so to speak, but as we start getting more cards out there, this card could actually be a pretty good one moving forward. But also in the meantime, having a zombie with a 1,700 attack is just good enough on its own. Then you got a copy of Vampire Dragon, the level 5 zombie, 2400 attack, 0 defense. When this tribute summon card is sent from the field to the graveyard, you can add one level 4 or lower monster from your deck to your hand. So really good in setting yourself up for other plays. Of course, it requires one tribute, but still, it's pretty well worth it with that 2400 attack in the first place. Then you have Shadow Ghoul, the level 5 zombie, 1600 attack, 1300 defense. This card gains 100 attack for each monster in your graveyard. So because this deck kind of styles itself along with putting different monsters in your graveyard, especially through the use of Gozuki and cards along those lines, Shadow Ghoul could actually be a pretty strong monster if used later on within the duel. Next we have Bone Crusher, a level 4 zombie with 1600 attack and 200 defense. When this card is special summoned from your graveyard by the effect of a zombie type monster, you can target one spell or trap card your opponent controls and destroy that target. During the end phase of the turn, this card was special summoned, destroy it. So it's just a good way to start clearing your opponent's back row if you're able to utilize some of your other monsters' effects. So it's a pretty good one. Next you have Return Zombie. It's a level 4 zombie with 1000 attack and 1600 defense. During your standby phase, you can pay 500 life points and add this card from your graveyard to your hand. You must have no cards in your hand to activate and to resolve this effect. For me, this is a good card, just because I like to play very aggressive, and typically I'll find myself with no cards in my hand, just because I play overly aggressive. Having Return Zombie in the graveyard will at least give you one monster in your hand for the next turn, so it's still a really good card. Then you have Vampire Lady, a level 4 zombie, 1550 attack and 1550 defense. When this card inflicts battle damage to your opponent, declare one card type, monster, spell, or trap, and your opponent sends one card of that type from their deck to the graveyard. So between Vampire Lord and Vampire Lady, that secondary effect where you're able to send a card from your opponent's deck to the graveyard is nice, because you could pretty much figure out what kind of cards players are running based off of the type of deck that they're playing. Maybe you'll see that maybe they're running a type of deck where you'll only expect them to see one or two trap cards. Go ahead and call trap. That way you know pretty much which card they're going to be sending to the graveyard. So yeah, pretty good effect. And last but not least, you have Dragon Zombie, the level 3 zombie, 1600 attack and 0 defense. Just a plain vanilla zombie. But now moving on to the spells in this deck, we got YuGiOh. Target 2 face-up monsters on the field and have the attack of one monster, and if you do, add that lost attack to the other monster. These effects last until the end phase. And you have Super Rush Headlong, a very familiar card, a quick play spell where you target one face-up monster you control and declare one attribute. If that target battles an opponent's monster with that attribute this turn, you destroy that opponent's monster at the start of the damage step. So that's just another really good card. Get that one out of the recent mini box. Definitely worth getting. Then you got the Shallow Grave. Each player selects a monster in their graveyard and special summons it in face-down defense position. So, just another good card. You don't see a lot of flip effect monsters in this deck, but you do have a lot of powerful cards that could end up in the graveyard. So utilizing the Shallow Grave, maybe early on in the duel while your opponent doesn't have any strong monsters in the graveyard, maybe use your Gozuki's effect to send a monster like Red Eye Zombie Dragon to the graveyard, then activate the Shallow Grave. You can do so many different types of combos with this card, so it would be a really, really good one to use. Then you get your classic Mashizer, the trap card where you activate only when a monster is sent from the field to your graveyard. Select and destroy one monster on the field, and you can activate this card during the damage step. And also, too, we got a copy of Magical Arm Shield. When your opponent declares an attack while you control a monster, target one face-up monster your opponent controls, except for the attacking monster, and take control of that target until the end of the battle phase. And if you do, it is attacked instead, and you proceed to do the damage calculation. So this one's good, especially when you're seeing a lot of decks where they're flooding the field with monsters with the same attack. Case in point is the Red Eyes decks. Seeing as you're going to have a whole bunch of monsters on their side of the field with the same attack, hopefully on at the same time, you grab one of their Red Eyes, have it attack into the other, and they'll cancel themselves out, and your opponent is down 2 monsters. So in the current setup, Magical Arm Shield is a card that you're going to see getting a little more use, until maybe the meta shifts again. So last card we have here for the traps is the Golden Apples. When you take battle damage while you control no monsters, gain life points equal to the battle damage you took, and if you do, special summon one Malice token. It's a Fiend Dark type, level 1, and its attack and defense are each equal to the amount of the life points you gain by this effect. So it gives you another monster on the field after you absorb some life point damage. Really, really good trap card. One that you're able to get out of the Flame Tyrant box set. Definitely worth getting that super rare. So overall, this is just a really fun to play zombie deck. You can see how there's a lot of pieces here. My personal tweaks here would be to add a few more copies of some of the more, some of the more noteworthy monsters like a Vampire Lord or like a Gozuki if you're able to get multiple copies of those. But it's going to take a lot of work because a lot of these more sought after cards are in a 200 pack box set, and that's just really difficult to try and get multiple copies of unless you have a lot of gems and a lot of resources and maybe a little extra money lying around if you're going to end up buying additional packs. But yeah, from a zombie perspective, the potential's there. But for now, this deck is a pretty fun casual deck that I think would just be a real interesting set of plays to use. So yeah, if you run a similar zombie deck, or if you have your own spin on a zombie deck that you've been playing with, whether it's casual or competitive, I'd love to hear about it. Feel free to reach out on Twitter at YuGiOh Deck Talk. It's all one word, at YuGiOh Deck Talk, and I'd love to hear from you. But anyway, that's it for today's episode. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Take care.